What do you call that noise?
The XTC podcast.
XTC
What do you call that noise?
Steel yourself for the hardest battle, the grooviest bass player, and the friendliest podcast. I'm Mark Fisher, and this is What Do You Call That Noise, the XTC podcast. With me today are two pretty special guests and one extra special guest who I'll be introducing in a second. First, something to get us into the spirit of things. In recent episodes, we've been taking recommendations from some of the world's leading sommeliers about the perfect drink to pair with the perfect XTC song. So far, we've had Kathy Forster recommending a rum and coke with Travels in Nihilon, Donna Rees pairing a strong dark Wiltshire ale with You're a Good Man Albert Brown, and also a bottle of cheap cider to go with grass. Sorry about this, Colin. And Julie Matthews teaming the wheel and the maypole with a vodka and orange. Today, it's the turn of Kate Catalina.
What do you call that noise?
My name is Kate Catalina, and I suggest pairing XTC's complicated game with a nice chilled glass of chocolate whiskey.
Thank you, Kate. I'll be trying that before the episode is out. You can hear Kate's own music and a lot more besides at katecatalina.com. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the dedicated followers on Patreon. A big thumbs up to all of them. I'll give a name check to the Knights in Shining Karma at the end of the episode. And if you'd like to join them, please head to patreon.com/Mark Fisher. I've just seen an article only yesterday that has the headline, How Podcasters Replaced Our Real Friends. So that's quite a responsibility we have. We've got to be the friends of everybody listening today. So who are going to be your friends today? First, let me introduce Sarah Palmer. Hello, Sarah. How are you?
Hello, Mark. You are very professional. I very much enjoyed that intro.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Many of you know Sarah from her appearance in the XTC documentary This Is Pop. Sarah is our resident musician today, being a member of Fascine, who you can find out all about at fascine.com. And you can also hear Sarah's renditions of nursery rhymes in two recent editions of the XTC podcast. And then hello to Peter Mills.
Hello, good morning, Mark.
Peter is the author of The Monkees, Head and the 1960s, available from Jawbone Press. And you can also read him on the subject of Ladybird in the XTC Bumper Book of Fun for Boys and Girls, and on the songs of Colin Moulding in What Do You Call That Noise, an XTC Discovery book, both of which are available from XTClimelight.com, which leaves our very specialist of very special guests. It's Colin Moulding. Hello, Colin. Thanks very much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Good morning, everyone. I'm fine, thank you. It's a lovely, bright morning in Swindon, and the birds are singing, and what more could you ask for?
I can't think of anything more I could ask for. That's great to have you on, Colin. And the reason for inviting Colin onto the podcast is he has reinvented himself as a solo artist for the first time since Too Many Cooks in the Kitchen in 1980. We're all very excited here because we've only just heard The Hardest Battle, which you can buy at burningshed.com, with its rare combination of Beach Boys harmonies and Shakespearean lyrics.
First I've heard that one.
Colin, you chose not to go under the name of the Colonel this time, but here you are with a solo single. How did it come about?
Just being in lockdown, really, wanting to do something, pulling my hair out and thinking, my God, what we're going to do in the many months that we're going to be locked up, So I sort of went out in the studio and wandered around secondhand bookshops and did all sorts of things. And I came across this book. It's called The Complete Pocket Positives. And in it, there is phrases by famous people. And I came across this particular one by the poet E.E. Cummings. I think he's American, although it says he's an English poet in this book, but I'm almost sure he's American. This quote here is like, to be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you like everybody else means to fight the hardest battle. And I had a bit of a light bulb moment, And I thought there's a song there. And I thought, well, there's the title, The Hardest Battle. I was led in bed and I came up with a few chords. And that was the beginnings of it, really. And throughout lockdown, I was kind of busy beavering away, doing all those vocals. Must be about 100 vocals on there or something.
100 vocals, that's...
Something outrageous, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And just working in this little bunker here on my own for months and months and months, really. And then I had gear problems, 5 months where I couldn't record a note. And getting anything fixed while there's a lockdown on is a bloody nightmare.
But it's funny that you've mentioned the lockdown, because I was actually thinking it myself, because there's something about the song which is fantastic, as we would expect, because it's got this sort of sense of being an upbeat pep talk, and I wondered whether I can almost imagine it being in a sort of Disney movie as a sort of family, hey everybody, things are going to be all right, type of message, if you can just be true to yourself, sort of thing.
Yeah, well,
and
yeah.
I wondered whether you were sort of writing it as a sort of antidote to lockdown.
I think everybody's been on their own, I think. So maybe there is a little bit of that in it, I don't know. I just came across this quote and I thought there's a song there, whether it has anything to do with psychologically with the lockdown, I don't know. But, I took it from the hardest battle. That's my watchword, and I'll try and stay on course with that. I think you have to. If you start with the first line of what it's about, that's a good start, and just try and stay on track,
I heard you say something like along those lines before in terms of songwriting, the idea of starting with the theme of the song. That seems, and then the more I've thought about it, the more I've thought about your songs in particular. You tend to do that. We're only making plans for Nigel. It doesn't. It sort of gets straight to the point. Is that an important thing from a songwriting perspective?
I think it's a must. I think Ray Davies used to do it all the time. Thank you for the days. There it is. That's your starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can branch out from that. And it just becomes like a crossword puzzle then, You just build on the rock and try and expand it, but you've got to keep to the point, I think.
Yeah, I think I find it fascinating, because you could also, I wouldn't be surprised if you'd have said something like, oh, as long as you have the chorus and the chorus is the message, then you can say what you like in the verse. But you're not saying that at all. You're saying start with the verse and make that the key thing.
Well, I don't really worry whether it's labelled as a chorus or a verse, I'm not. It just is, and it grows. And if it's a chorus, then it's a chorus. If it's a verse, I'm not that bothered. The important thing is to stick to the point, and it'll come through.
Yeah. Does that resonate with you, Sarah, from a songwriting point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to be too personal or too abstract. Funny enough, one of my questions about your new stuff, because obviously Mark and Peter and I have been listening to them intently the last couple of days and studying the lyrics, and I wonder, they do sound personal and poetic, but they do have an abstract nature, and I wonder if that's important to you, for your fans and listeners to know exactly what a song is about. I mean, you could say it in an interview literally, and then, some fans might still think it means something else. But with these two songs in particular, is that important for you, to people to know exactly what you're saying and for there to be no divisive conversation?
It's important for them to get the point, I think, but it's also important to kind of not be too literal, as well, and to say things that it's not exactly on the point, but they know what. I mean, I think the main thing is, it's like with poetry and the lines that you do there. It's not what you say; it's the feeling that it gives off. That's what it's got to be. And I think if you stick to that mantra, I think you're okay.
Yeah, because all of your songs, to me, even if they have a type of melancholy in the lyric, and even if there's something that's a very serious message, to me, your songs give me a lot of positivity. And I don't know if that's a conscious thing. Even if you're singing about grief, I still don't come away from it feeling like I, am in this absolute depression. So I don't know if that's something you've ever tried to do.
What makes me cry is not sadness. I think sadness is just gloom. What makes you cry is a kind of an arriving. You arrive at a place. You arrive. It's something realized after so long. I think that's what makes me cry.
Yeah.
sadness doesn't make you cry, I don't think.
Are you thinking of Colin? Are you thinking of something like the narrative of Billy Elliot, where you've got a boy who's from a coal mining community who wants to be a dancer, and it's the most ridiculous thing. How could he possibly be a dancer? And then he becomes a dancer.
That's it. That's what makes me cry. Is an arrival of a certain dream or something that's becoming a reality after so long and so much of a fight for it to get to this place. And I think that's what makes me cry, and that's but sadness and despair doesn't really make me cry. It just makes me go into myself. It's a different.
Even with something like "Scatter Me," it's a very upbeat sort of tune. It's sort of I'm going to die, but life will go on.
Yeah, well, if you look at your favourite films, they've got a variety of emotions in them. They're not all one thing, are they? They go through passages of sadness and elation and then trouble and Scatter Me it's kind of got a bittersweetness about it. It's upbeat and it's joyful, but at the same time it's talking about a subject which is some people might find a bit distasteful. But yeah, I think if you can get all those qualities in a song, then that's a winner, I think. It's not all one flavour,
Just picking up on what we were just saying there about Scatter Me, one thing I really like about the new single, and that interested me, that it sort of comes together with a demo of Say It, which is an older song. I think that's right, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and they seem to be kind of related. They've both got this sort of carpe diem thing, saying, well, now is the moment to do this thing. Now is the, instead of putting it off till next week or whatever. And Scatter Me has a bit of that as well. It's like, well, here are the instructions, and this is, so it's making a positive out of that situation. Do you recognise that sort of way of looking at that little group of songs? It's about seizing the day.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, you're right. It does have that quality in it. But Say It was written quite a few years ago now, but I just felt it didn't have a fair crack of the whip, It came out on a kind of a promo thing, really, in the last days of Rome, which was XTC, at the time. So I thought, God, I hope this is going to catch a bus to somewhere. I wrote Say It for what was going to be the forthcoming XTC album, but little did I know that it wasn't going to be one. So, but after a certain amount of time, I thought, I don't think there is going to be one. So I thought, well, it's got to catch a bus to somewhere, So we better put it on this promo thing, which was a bit of an expedient, really. And, it was a bit unsatisfactory. And I got the guys from Pugwash to play on it because, I thought the chords are tricky, so I'll have to get Duncan to play them. So I wanted to sort of do a decent version of it, really. And I remembered the version I did initially of it, which I thought was just had a little bit more feeling in it. And I thought, well, I'll put it on this little enterprise,
So tell us exactly what we're hearing on this version of Say It. This is the original version, so it's not the version that was released as you just described it.
No, this was
but it's more than a demo, is that right?
It is the demo, actually. It is the demo, but it came out well, so we better not call it a demo, otherwise people won't play it, You start calling things a demo, oh, Christ, get rid of that, And so we removed the word demo because it came out rather well.
Sometimes you find the demo has a better feel than the re-recorded version, and something you can't capture. And I don't think that's a derogatory thing. A demo it can have emotion that you can never capture again. So release all your demos.
No, you don't want them. No, you're exactly right. And some demos do have it. And then when you come to do the real thing, you think, oh, something's missing.
Yeah.
Mate, I think you're just too darn honed in on it when you let things fly naturally, it just happens wonderfully,
Yeah.
That's the thing with demos, But they are my demos are more a demonstration to myself rather than to other people.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Andy's demos were demonstrations to other people, but mine never were. So they were kind of, well, I better see if that bit works, or this bit works.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's always been for me. It was a demonstration to myself whether things could work within, certain instruments and stuff. That was all, really.
Do you know when to stop with your recordings? Do you have a process and then you can hit the stop button and go, I'm happy with that, I'm going to release that? Or do you sort of work on every syllable, the way that every chord is played? How long does it take you to accept a final version?
I don't actually enjoy recording, to be honest. Well, I do and I don't. I mean, Hitchcock used to say the best bit for him when he was making his films was when he was storyboarding, because it's creative. And that's the best bit for me, is when I'm in bed with my laptop and I'm plugging the keyboard in and I'm just tinkering and I'm coming up with things. And that's the process of discovery is wonderful,
Yeah.
And then you
No
think,
expectation.
no, exactly. And once you've done that, it's kind of, oh, Christ, I'm going to have to record this thing now and go all through the many months of layering vocals and everything to make it sound, But for me, I go back to the Hitchcock thing of the best bit about it is the process of discovery. And I believe it is.
I can imagine as well, Colin, just because of your experience, you've been in all of these professional studios with all these fantastic producers over the years, John Leckie, Steve Lillywhite, Todd Rundgren, and all the rest of them. And you've seen how fantastic recording studios operate. And so you know the standards. You've set the bar very high. You've been in a place where the bar is set very highly set. That must be, well, I don't know whether, that's my question. Is it daunting or is it inspirational to have been in that situation?
Well, it's only the last 10 years that I've really discovered how to record myself properly, to be honest. We had everybody at our disposal, even people making tuna fish sandwiches for us, I laugh at Liam Gallagher. Did you see that bit about, was it Liam Gallagher? Yeah. When he said, I've got to make my own tea now, And I identified with that, really. You've got to do it almost all yourself. I can't afford to pay an engineer £500 a day, to do that sort of thing. So it's a pretty steep learning curve,
Have you enjoyed the process of learning a home studio?
Sort of. It's hard work and got to be very disciplined about it. When I had Terry here doing we were doing the TC&I stuff in here, it was better because I needn't come round the other side of the desk to plug things in. I had someone who can plug it in,
Yeah, no one enjoys that element. I don't think I've ever plugged in my own mic.
No, you're very lucky.
Listen, Colin, if you put a tweet out saying, will someone come and record me, you will have a plethora of young musicians and tech people to come in, make you tuna sandwiches and turn up your amp. You just put that tweet out.
I dare say I would, Sarah. I dare say I would. But I don't know. I'm a bit of a loner, I suppose. But,
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's daunting. I bought a load of kit, which I didn't really know what it did,
Yeah.
Somebody said, well, you've got to get this because it does that and it does wonderful things. And you only realize what it does after a couple of years, really.
Yeah.
I can record my voice well. The other stuff is a little bit foggy, but Stuart Rowe bails me out. If he says, I really can't get to grips with that, Colin, then you better go back to the drawing board, I think.
So what's your setup? What's your home studio setup? Because I can see you've got an analog desk there. Do you work with any programming at all, or Logic or Pro Tools, or are you completely old school, like to...
I'm Logic. I mean, yes.
Okay.
I work with Logic and I have the Nord,
Yeah.
which I'm this thing here, and I record the Nord. I go into the Radar.
Yeah.
By default, I inherited the band Radar, which packed in some years ago.
Yeah.
And then I bought a Radar 2. I just like the converters on the Radar. I think they're pretty unbeatable, to be honest.
Yeah.
And now I've just recently bought a Radar 24, all secondhand, They're far too expensive to buy new, but the converters are second to none.
Yeah.
And then I just do digital, straight into the computer.
So you're always recording real instruments. You're never actually programming anything or using, Omnisphere or whatever. You're always completely recording fresh.
I like to, yeah. I just think with analog gear, you know where you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it's going in, you can see what's happening, and yeah, I just like analog. You can mess with it, and as it's going in, and pretty much I don't mess with it once it's in there.
Yeah.
Plugins, they're a waste of time with me.
Yeah.
I like to get it right when it's going in, and then I'm happy.
Yeah.
And then Stuart Rowe cleans up the mess. So good on you, Stuart.
That's what he's paid for.
Yeah. So that's what I like to do.
I suppose sometimes when you have an extreme, infinite number of not just instruments but with programming, because it's never ending, you never know when to stop. And I suppose with the way that you're doing it, it's quite easy to know where you're at and accept what you're doing, rather than having this huge sweet shop of options and not really knowing. You could just put everything on a track. You could just go forever and ever, and then you don't even know what it is anymore. So I suppose with the way that you're doing it, you've got a control over, the acceptance of the song, rather than just going, I'll plop that on,
Yeah, I don't like to deviate too far from just the simple setup of the chords and me singing. You can get awfully carried away, I think, with production, and I don't like to deviate too far. If I discover a nice harmony, yeah, that would be nice to put that on there. But and doubling your vocal, only if it needs it. The important thing is the feeling. That the feeling comes over. If I've doubled a vocal and think, well, what do I like best? I like to A-B them, bring them up on the desk and say, right, do I like that? No, I don't know. It's that kind of thing.
I'm reminded, actually, just from what you're saying there, Colin, it just popped into my head, Boarded Up, which I always think is an amazing, it's a fantastic song, but also like an amazing sounding song. But if you sort of, you made a little inventory of what's on that track, there wouldn't be a great deal in terms of, well, this track has got all this stuff and that track's got all that stuff. But the mood that's created just out of those few elements, just amazing. It's one of my favourites, that, maybe for that reason.
Yeah, it's just atmosphere, that one, really. I wouldn't say it was musically strong. It was we went for atmosphere, like footsteps on wood and stuff like that,
Yeah.
And lyrically, it's not too bad. So it was more of an atmosphere with that one rather than a kind of a production number, So some are like that, they're just that way.
I'm thinking about the 100 vocal tracks that you've got on The Hardest Battle. That sounds like a lot. I mean,
that may be an exaggeration.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
Are we hearing all of them? I mean, that because it's a similar sort of question. You can add and you can add and you can add and you can add. If you were the Beatles, you only would have had 4 tracks in the first place, or 8 tracks doubled up.
Well, they did everything at the same time, like like they used to do in the 50s. All had to be done. But they had the acoustics to manage all that fantastically,
Yeah, and but you could, you could, why not stop at 50 vocals and why, or 79 or 110?
Oh, I see. Strength, I suppose. I know, in terms of backing vocals, I know the sort of strength I want. So it's usually 6 or 8, and then there's 6 or 8 of another part, Maybe the lead vocal will be doubled or not, but I know the kind of strength I require, and that determines how many I put on.
Yeah. And I mentioned the Beach Boys in my introduction. Were you thinking of the Beach Boys? Because even as I said that, I was thinking, actually, is it even before the Beach Boys? Is it, I don't know, the King Singers or something like that? It is very vocally
now you're
strong,
talking
isn't it?
there. Yeah, no, it is a bit Beach Boyish. Yes, that vocal introduction definitely.
Yeah.
All the do. I just love all that.
Yeah,
we grew up with all that, so that's going to come out.
And of course, with a studio, you can experiment with that sort of stuff because you can do it all yourself. You don't need all the Beach Boy brothers to be there with you.
No, I don't think my brother sings, so it would be difficult. Yeah, exactly. That's the beauty of sound on sound, multi-tracks and stuff. You can do a lot because it's there. It all depends on the feeling. That's all I work to all the time. Is the feeling is the most important thing, and only do as much, otherwise you'll smother it. Yeah, that's a mantra I've got in me bonds,
I was thinking about that line, "To thine own self be true," because it seems to be. Well, I just wondered whether it's like in terms of your songwriting career, there was a point where you were under, like very early on, you were under Andy's shadow as a songwriter, and then you discovered that if you were true to yourself, then you could find your own voice.
Niche. Yes,
Yeah.
and yes, quite right. I learned a lot from the old geezer, as one does. I think as life is a learning process, and whoever you come in contact with, it all rubs off on you. I suppose with the advent of Nigel and all the rest of it, that was when I became more myself. One doesn't know how to react sometimes, but it's a process of discovery, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course you were still very young. You were still in your early 20s. It's perfectly natural to take a while to find your own for not just as a musician, but as a human being. It takes a long time to find your place in the world, which I suppose is what the song is about. But and even to call it the hardest battle suggests that it is a struggle. You regard it as a struggle to become happy and comfortable with yourself.
I think there are people who are not themselves most of their life, and I like to think that they eventually do become themselves. But it's, it can be a bit of a struggle to conform to what society wants of you. It's a battle.
Well, I was thinking of it also in relationship to your own songs, because having got to that point with that drums and wiresy sort of era where you found your voice as a songwriter, this is also true of Andy. But both of you, I think you in particular, have it's as if you hadn't read the songwriting rule book, and so nobody was telling you, oh, but you're not meant to write songs about balls and chains and demolition. You're not meant to write songs about generals and majors. You're not meant to write songs about all of these things. You're meant to write "Love, Love Me Do." You're meant to write "Please, Please Me." That's the blueprint. And you were always true to yourself. To whether it's Kenny, whether it's Scatter Me, whatever, to go in your own direction. And I wonder why that should be. How you found the confidence just to say, "Oh, I'm going to go in this direction and see what happens."
Yeah, well, you just give full vent to your imagination, really. When you do that, there are no restrictions. You just got to let it go off on its own thing. And it's better if it does that, All those little lines that come crashing into your brain from your subconscious, that's the proper stuff. You should write that stuff down. But the stuff that's in your conscious, that's fairly sort of boring tackle, really. You got to give full vent to your imagination, and it will be different. The truth is very strange. And I think when it's not strange, then maybe you're not truly being yourself, because it sort of conforms to some sort of template then. There's lots of cliches in rock and roll, I think. And if you're true to yourself, you avoid them. Andy used to say you got to get past the editor. The editor is the evil one. You're just trying to round everything up into something that's kind of normal. But we're all not normal. We're all kind of a little bit out there if we just give vent to our imaginations, And you just got to get past that editing kind of restriction.
Yeah, because I was even thinking about it I knew that your song was going to be called The Hardest Battle, but I had no idea what it was going to be like. And it reminded me of, doing Limelight fanzine back in the day. And I don't know, you or Andy would give me a list of the songs that you were working on for the next album. And it would just be so intriguing, because all I would have is these titles. And they, as I say, they weren't "Please, Please Me." They weren't "I Want to Hold Your Hand." They were, I wonder what this this song called English Roundabout it is going to be about, because it doesn't fit, as you say. It doesn't. It isn't a rock cliche that you were playing with.
Well, sometimes you don't even know what the song's going to be about. You just start. I think that was a quote by Philip Larkin, is that he didn't really know what his poems were about until he got into them, and that's a good thing. You don't necessarily know. Maybe you just got a line or something, but you don't actually know the meaning behind it until you're into it. A few, and then down the line you think, oh yes, I know what this is about now, and then you shape it, a bit. But very often you don't know what it's about. You just make a start, Let your imagination just, don't worry about whether it's a verse or a chorus or not. Just let it all come out, That's the best way.
How disciplined are you with your writing, Colin? Do you set yourself a target and say, I'm going to write a song today? Is it merely situational, or you just go home and write a lyric that you feel at that moment? Or do you force yourself to do it?
No, I don't force myself to do it. It's usually in bed with me little keyboard that I have. I just plug it into my laptop. I've probably got a bit of Radio 3 going on in the background. And I just kind of, not really kind of, I think if you go into the studio with the intention of writing, very often nothing comes, you just put too much pressure on yourself. But if you just sort of watching the telly, or you're strumming or something, or you just listen to the radio, and then, it's those sort of times when things happen, because your mind is free. You're not trying to discipline it, From the point of view of getting the recording done, then some discipline needs to be done, but in terms of just serving your imagination, no, I don't think it works. Just kind of, well, I know those ABBA guys used to go into their place on that island or something and write, and they didn't feel that unless you did that, anything would come out. Well, maybe that works for them, but for me, it has to be less restrictive, I just
you can do the Tin Pan Alley thing of just going into your piano room
brill
every day.
building or something. Yeah. No, that's not for me. No discipline.
So it is a catharsis in a way, isn't it? It is, in that case, it is purely from whatever you're feeling, and that means maybe we won't get songs from you, every month. But so basically, it's whatever you're feeling at the time.
Yeah. That's the way I like to work these days. I don't think I could do an album now. They take too long,
Yeah.
At my age, you run to the doctors, you don't walk,
Just in terms of the kind of the musical vibe of the new track, Colin. I mean, Mark was talking about the Beach Boys earlier on, which, it's got that lovely, you've got the entire Wilson clan. You're standing in for the entire Wilson clan then. But it's also got like, I don't know, it reminded me almost like of a if not quite a hymn, but like a song that you would sing at school or something. It's got that kind of element to it as well, that choral effect.
Yeah, it's slightly religious.
Hybrid. Is that something you were sort of aiming for?
I wasn't aiming for it. I was just going, I think I was playing Nimrod. I think the chords to Nimrod by Algar. I thought, oh, yeah. And then it went on to some other chords. I thought, oh, Christ, I've got a chord sequence here. I wonder if I could put some lyrics to it. And then this hardest battle thing come up, and it sounded like a battle,
Yeah.
And it sounds a bit religious,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I was messing about with the chords to Algar's Nimrod at the time.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful. Keep on messing, man, because it's good stuff. The other musical thing which I really noticed and I really like is sort of it goes on the front foot unexpectedly, like in the last 10 seconds.
Oh yes,
it takes on a little Latin groove.
The pace steps up. Yes, double time.
I really like that.
Yeah, well, the Kinks used to do that occasionally. They used to go doom ta, go out in double time, you know.
Yeah. And did that just come while you were doing it, or did you think, I'm going to put one of these in, or how did that go?
I think it's that sort of thing is just instinctual. I think you just do it and you think, oh yeah, that would work. You know, those sort of things are instinctual, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a great little sort of little, you know, we talk about it being sort of uplifting. It really gives it an actual uplift. That, you know, the rhythmic shift it's a knockout.
Yeah, and the growing vocals and everything, it brings it to a kind of a crescendo, you know.
Yeah.
Marvellous. I'm glad you like it. Relieved.
You're going to get a lot of people dissecting the lyrics because I think it's fantastic lyrically, as all of your songs, to be honest. But it is, like we were saying earlier, it is abstract enough for people to be divided and think, oh, maybe more into it than they should. I mean, I know we said earlier you write from the heart and whatnot, but do you feel like you need to explain the lyric in this song?
It explains itself, I think.
Yeah.
I would like to say. I mean, for thine own heart be true, to thine own heart be true, I think is Shakespeare, and that comes from the Pocket Positives again. You know,
Yeah. There's
this whole section on being oneself, of statements of much along those lines. You know, and the E. Cummings thing was the first thing, like the hardest battle. And I thought, Christ, where am I going to take this? And there's a quote from Ogden Nash. I think he's an American poet. And he said, what was it? I am not an owl, I'm a jackdaw or something, you know. So that's where the bird references come from.
Yeah.
And then the Shakespeare thing, to thine own self be true, you know. So I put them all together, really. And
you're referencing these people, and I'd love to know what of your own lyrics you are really proud of, because you are absolutely fantastic lyricist. So it'd be lovely to hear if there was a song that you're most, proud of, period.
Oh, God, I wouldn't say there was any one particular song. It's, it's poets as well, really. It's all jumbled up, you know.
Yeah.
Inspiration is never all one thing, is it? It's all jumbled up and fragments of other things.
So you never go, that is unbelievable, I am brilliant. You never step back from the mic and go, yep, wrapped, brilliant.
You've just got to... I like the lyrics of Cole Porter and all those guys, and all that kind of era. They were pretty smack on with the way they used to put words together, you know.
Yeah.
So I tend to go back rather than of my contemporaries, really.
Yeah. You're up there, though, Colin.
Thank you very much. Ray Davis, obviously, the Beatles, you know. You just borrow from everyone, really, don't you?
Have you ever been attracted to that sort of writing that David Bowie did it a bit, REM?
Oh, chopping up bits of paper.
Well, yeah, and so you get a sort of impression, but actually, if you try and make sense of it, it doesn't. Maybe there's an emotion there, but it doesn't make any coherent sense, because it seems to me that neither you nor Andy. There may be a bit of debate you might be have about certain. There's a bit of room for interpretation, but I can't think of a single XTC song where I basically don't understand what it is that you're going on about. You know, it's imaginative, it might be poetic, but it's not hard to understand.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying, and the chopping up the bits of paper, which I think Bowie used to do and stuff. That's okay if it gives off a certain feeling. I think, that's when it's successful. There are other times when you think, what does that mean? And just the ambiguity sends you off on something. I don't know, but I've got enough ambiguity in my subconscious, I think, not to be able to. I don't need to chop up the paper, you know. If it's spring, if you're on a thread or something, very often these things sort of just come out. It's purely instinct. I'm always a believer in kind of, you should take what your subconscious gives you, because basically it's doing that for a reason. And I always write those little snippets down. I never discard them. If they they've come from the back of my mind, and I wouldn't have said it in the normal scheme of things. And I always pay a lot of attention to those things because they very often are loaded with meaning. Yeah, it's instinctual, all that, really.
It feels like you've mentioned Ogden Nash and E. Cummings and somebody I've forgotten, but it feels
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare. It feels like there should be a Peter Mills question here. Peter is a poet and teaches poetry. Peter, are you burning to ask a poetry-related question?
Well, there's a specific one. I mean, in the second of Mark's books, I did a little piece which was called "Where Did the Ordinary People Go?", which was just sort of a little comparison between some of your stuff, Colin, and some of John Betjeman's poems, where there seemed to be a kind of overlap. And as I was writing that, there's sort of more and more of these connections seem to come, and not least with Comrades of Pop, because that reminded me of those records John Betjeman made for Charisma in the 70s.
Oh, yes, I have a few of those.
Yeah.
I'm being rumbled here, aren't I?
No, so I mean, do you like Betjeman? You know,
yes,
what
of course,
do you think about that?
Well, his sensibilities, they compare favourably with my own, but English country life and stuff, but just as much as Ray Davies, really. But yeah, I do like Betjeman,
Yeah.
I like Larkin as well, and that was what I was trying to do with Comrades of Pop. I mean, people say, "Oh, that was a dig at Andy." Oh, bloody hell, it wasn't. It was just me wanting to write something succinctly, like Larkin's "They Fuck You Up, Your Mum and Dad," all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just something succinctly about the industry, with a little bit tongue in cheek,
Yeah.
But it rather got taken the wrong way, really. But you win some, you lose some,
Well, I think it's an amazing little track and covers a lot of ground. I suppose the difference between, a song and a poem is that a song comes at you, doesn't it, in like a fixed form, 2 minutes, 3 seconds or something. Whereas you can, with a poem, you can go back to it, you can read it as quick as you like or as slow as you like.
Yeah, that was the first time I was going to, probably the one and only time I'm going to do a poem set to music, but it...
Oh, I hope not. Oh, no, because it's really good. I mean, I'm interested to hear what you say about kind of Larkin's ghost wafting around through that particular machine, because there is that just a little interesting little sort of hard edge which you don't always get with Betjeman, actually, that you do with Larkin. He's just got that little edge, hasn't he?
He's got that little edge, but it always ends in disaster, doesn't it, with him? Whereas with Betjeman, there's always a nice ending.
Something turns up.
Yeah, it's a better ending, I think, with Betjeman. Whereas Larkin, he doesn't care if he goes down into the valley of death, does he, really?
No,
and that's where
right.
You'll stay there, really.
Yeah.
That's the difference between the two. But I like the two for different reasons,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, this is slightly off topic, but I always think that the lyric of dying, which I have to say has haunted me for about 35 years, reminds me of a Betjeman Larkin crossover. There's the empathy and the tenderness, but there's also, I don't want to die like you.
Yeah, it's a little bit of, is it Obage, is it, or something? That's a Larkin poem, isn't it?
Yeah.
He wrote it for the Daily Mail or something in the 70s, and it was just,
whereas like the Betjeman death in Leamington, like you say, the tea tray is there all nicely laid out.
Yeah, it's more Betjeman than it is Larkin, I think.
Yeah.
Although Don't Want to Die Like You is probably a bit more like Larkin. It's a mixture of the two, I suppose.
And that's really interesting to me, to see those influences at work in great songs. I mean, you can enjoy them and they're super successful just as they are, but this other stuff is adds an extra layer to it. Yeah,
well, it's the little minutiae, isn't it, of that you pick up on old people, like boiled sweets and and tea towels and stuff like that,
Yes.
It's all good fodder for that kind of thing, really.
Yeah, that eye for detail. That's the key to it.
It's Alan Bennett territory, I suppose.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm wondering whether there's a connection between that the thine to thine own self be true and this sort of feeling of from Betjeman's sort of nostalgia and whatever and the Englishness and stuff. It seems to me that Colin, you were at a very young age. Really, you were quite nostalgic. You know, but you were only 24 or something when you wrote Ball and Chain, so you were already missing a passing time. And you know, now that you're the age you are now, it's maybe not surprising that you're missing the playing fields in Kenny. But you've been consistent. Actually, you've always sort of had a slight maybe longing for a past that's gone, even from quite an early age. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, possibly. I'm quite a melancholic person, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, you just work with what you got. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And has age changed you in that respect? You know, has your perspective changed with age?
No. The past is always wonderful, and the future is always foreboding for me. You know?
Because I was thinking about it but I was, you know, I'm guess I'm thinking this because none of us are getting any younger, so I'm getting older, and sort of I'm more conscious of the past, and it's with a slight shock that I realised that you wrote Bungalow, or at least Bungalow came out in 1992. And so I don't know when you wrote it, but that was, I think you were about 37 when that came out. So it strikes me that the parents that you were writing about would have been the age that you are now, if you see what I mean. So you are now of the age where you could be aspiring to that Bungalow, and I don't know whether your sense of time has changed that. Have you become your parents, or
I'm fighting off becoming beige. Sorry, what was the question?
Well, the question
it's
the question about the sense of time, and that you wrote a song that is very poignant about an older generation, and you now are that older generation. I don't know whether that makes you look at the song in a different sort of way.
No, I think with Bungalow it was actually I think I know what brought that one around. But as I say, I mentioned earlier you don't actually know what the song's about until you're into it, with poems as well. And with that one, it was there was a little track on a Beach Boy record. You remember Smiley Smile? It was a kind of a compilation thing. There was a little track called Little Pad.
Yeah.
If I only had a little pad in Hawaii. And I thought, little pad, you're sort of pining for some sort of, and I thought, if I only had a bungalow by the sea, and, you know, and then it grew from there. And then that whole thing about my parents, I think, Christ, my parents, they wanted a bungalow by the sea. That was the ultimate to retire, you know, but I didn't know what it was, it was just that little pad thing, really, that started that one off. So you don't actually know where you're going until you've started sometimes, you know?
I could ask you this question about the whole of the TCNI gigs, the live gigs, but Bungalow in particular, it had such a dramatic effect for the audiences. That was the first time it had never been played live, and here you were getting, playing to a perfectly silent audience.
Stuart Rose said, "Oh, you just don't want to just play the hits or whatever." He said, "I'll tell you what really works well at the Arts Centre, if you do something that's really intimate." He said, "What can you do that's really sort of intimate and this would bring them in? You know, they're there, and it's quite an intimate theatre, but doing a little intimate song really works there because he'd already done it, you know." And I thought. And then I started to think, I really haven't got anything of that nature, you know. And then I thought, Bungalow, I wonder if I could get Gary to actually just, me and him do a duet, like, just him on the keyboards and me singing, with Bungalow. So that's what we did, and it really worked. But I think I have Stuart Rowe to thank for that. It was his idea to actually do something as intimate as that.
And were you surprised by the emotional effect it had on grown men weeping in the stalls?
Well, I didn't mop up their tears at the end of it, so I don't know how much liquid was expended, But it went down well. Stuart came backstage afterwards and said that it was brilliant. That was exactly what I had intended. So yeah, I was enlightened that it had worked, but it was a bit of a gamble. And then we used it in the intro before we came on, some of the chords of Bungalow. But that was mainly because of the key of it, and it would lift quite nicely when we came on to do Say It at the beginning. Chordally, it worked, We came on, and then when you lift it up to E, it's this kind of a euphoric kind of thing,
Mm-hmm. The other thing I was thinking about Bungalow is that there's a whole line of songs that you've written where it's not in your voice, it's in the voice of your parents or the voice of or Nigel's parents or the fly on the wall. There's you're often taking different perspectives, which I think is it. Again, for a lot of the songs you were writing as a young man, I think it's sort of it shows a lot of empathy. We were talking about empathy and poetry as well, just thinking yourself into somebody else's shoes. I do find that a sort of natural thing rather than just saying I love you.
No, that's not conscious. I think that all depends on getting that first line.
Yeah.
When you get the first line, then that determines what person you're writing in, the third person or yourself or narrative or whatever. I think getting that first line determines that, and then the crossword puzzle can advance. Yeah.
I suppose the most famous person who writes in character is somebody like Randy Newman.
Oh yeah, yes, I've heard some of his stuff.
Where it's kind of almost like short stories, aren't they?
Yeah, yes. I've heard one or two of his stuff.
So much so that when he does kind of like a straight love song, like Real Emotional Girl or something, I'm thinking, well, is that him singing, or is he, is he imagining himself in, what it would feel like to feel like that? Do you make a clearer distinction between songs that sort of, are in character and ones that are, what you want to say?
No, as I said, I don't make that distinction. It's usually the first line that determines how I'm going to deliver it and in what sort of person. No, it's usually a first line comes to me, and then that will decide it. I don't make any specific plans of how I'm going to put this over. It's more instinctual than you would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you're singing in another voice or another perspective, it doesn't strike me that you have any difficulty finding an emotion for that. But I would also think it's easier to if you're saying this was my experience and I am vocalizing it, that it's easier to sing in the first person than it is to sing a chorus where Bungalow is the sort of chorus line. Do you get into character in that way?
I mean, initially on Bungalow, I thought, where it goes, Bungalow. Do you remember Sparky's Magic Piano?
Yeah.
I was going to have a vocoder on it, Bungalow.
There's still an element of that, I think.
Yeah, there was more on the demo than there was. The band were a little bit kind of iffy. Oh, what do you want to put that on there for? And I always imagined that it would be, but I was kind of talked out of it. But maybe I shouldn't have been talked out of it. Sometimes you just got no reason to do it, but it's instinctual. You think, oh, well, that's what I hear. And you should go with those feelings, I think. If that's what you hear, then just do it.
Yeah. Which again comes back to thine own self be true. Trust your instinct. Yeah.
What do you call that noise?
Have you ever had a panic attack on that magic roundabout in Swindon, Colin?
No, it's a beautiful piece of engineering, actually, and it's they're putting them in all over the world, I gather.
Yeah.
Just so people can panic. But no, once you're used to it, it's actually brilliant. The way it filters traffic. Yeah, a good day out, yes. Alton Towers, forget it,
I can just imagine so many people coming up to that and going, I'm never going back to Swindon ever again. I love Swindon. You know what? I came a couple of years ago and we played a gig. I can't remember the venue. Dave Franklin organised it for us. And I really love Swindon. It's got so much heritage, so much history. The people are not just friendly, they really enjoy communicating with you. And, now that we're all living on our phones and connected, but absolutely not connected in person, I love going to places like Swindon because people actually want to talk. even if it's small talk, I really loved it. So yeah, I'll be coming back to Swindon.
Yeah, it's okay, but they've messed it up.
What do you mean, the roads or the people?
Well, no, the bloody council, I think, because any decent buildings that we did have, they're just laying ruins.
Right. Yeah.
Lack of money to do them up, or
Yeah.
lack of initiative. I don't know. It's a bit of a moot point with me. But I remember the red brick town that I used to call my own.
Yeah.
And that's the Swindon I love, and it's forever in my memory, I suppose. But I go in. I very rarely go into the city centre now, but I did once. Well, we did during the lockdown, and not the real lockdown, but when it was easing off, we did drive in there. But it's changed immensely. It's I like what they've done to the railway buildings and converted into shops and stuff. They've really used it quite well, and that's a success story for the council. But generally, how they've left things, the Mechanics Institute still lies in ruins years after XTC finished rehearsing in there.
Perhaps there's another poem in there. Sounds like there's another song for you there.
It could be, yes.
Ball and Chain Part 2.
Do you know what? I do have a question or an observation. When I hear people like Peter or Mark talking to you about everything you've done and everything that you've brought to your fans, and I hear, the fire and the passion from people at your gigs, like you were saying, Mark, people were crying at Bungalow, or just following people in the forums on Facebook. Some people can, absolutely decimate each other, and they're so into it. It's amazing to see. And, I watch a lot of other bands and watch their followings and see what they're saying. And with you and XTC, you have given so many people so much life and purpose and hope and excitement. And you listen to people and they tear apart your lyrics in a really good way, and they recite everything to each other. They're at the pub and they're just bouncing off of each other. And I wonder, for you, how does that make you feel? Is that something you ever consider? Because I really hope you and the rest of the guys know that that's what you've done with your music and your artistry. It's amazing to see how you've brought people together and given them so much energy and things to live for. That's not really a question, but I'm just hoping that you're, one, aware of that, and two, I wonder if that's a helpful or a hindrance in how you go ahead with everything that you do artistically in the future.
Well, you don't let it affect you, otherwise you never write anything. I don't. You've got to go into yourself to actually find all the stuff you want to write about. I think when you start, you just want to be a respected musician, want to get good at playing your instrument and learn. And if people say you're a good bass player, then that was wonderful. Of course, as you go on, it's never enough, is it? You want to branch out. And in the early days, I didn't write at all. I think it was Steve Warren, one of our roadies, said, "You ought to write, Colin, otherwise you'll miss out." When you start out, you just want to be a respected musician, and then you get into writing, and then you have failures and whatnot, and you just learn. You're still learning now. But I'm thankful that people buy the records and stuff, and have done, and they think so highly of us, and that's all great. But for the writing, you mustn't go there. Otherwise you'll go off course. I think I have certain things that I think these things are going to keep me on course to write, and these things that's just all going to go to your head, and that's not going to be good for you.
Yeah.
So you follow your mantras that you have inside your head and stick to them, I think. And you've got to be in a darkened room to do it. You can't let outside influences intervene. It's a solitary. It's a lonely existence, I'll tell you, being a writer, where you know yourself. So
yeah, but what you've brought to people over the years, you use the word lonely. I think that your music has brought so many people together, and it really is precious. And you need to know that, Colin. I'm
well,
sure
thank you very much.
People have been telling you your whole life, but you need to know.
No, If I didn't know, I heard it here. Right.
Is there anything else you want to do artistically? So you've written for years. You're you know, for want of a better word, a solo artist now. Do you have any aspirations to collaborate with certain people, or are you just not necessarily winging it, but are you just writing as you feel?
I know Andy collaborates quite a bit with other people, but I think what comes out of it is a different type of song.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll stick my neck out and say this, but for me, I don't think it would work collaborating, you know.
Yeah.
I think myself would be too compromised. I'd have to give vent to my full subconscious.
Yeah.
And I can only do that if I'm on my own, you know.
Yeah.
But I know Andy does it regularly. He works with other people, but fair play if it works for him.
Yeah.
But I think a certain type of song comes out that would not be as intimate as I'd like it to be.
Do you think if you hadn't have met the boys back in the day, you would have always seeked out a band to go on the journey with? Or do you think you would have potentially been a solo artist?
No, I don't think I was well equipped to be a solo artist then, or if I am now. I just wanted to be a musician. I gave up my education for it. My parents were horrified, you know, that I was just giving it all up just to be a musician, and it's such a dodgy business. But it was the only thing I cared about, you know. I was desperate and I could barely play, but it was just a feeling that I had that I hoped would carry me through. If you're honest with yourself and you don't know it all, and you've got to learn, and being around people who are very competent, Dave and Andy are very accomplished musicians, and being around them, you learn a lot. And that was the thing, going from strength to strength, hoping against hope that you would be who you want to be eventually.
And with these new songs, you're absolutely in that place. You feel that it's exactly what you want to be saying.
Yeah, I think. Who knows? I don't know what's around the corner in the writing stake, so maybe it'll go off on a tangent elsewhere. But where I am now, and to thine own self be true, the fact that it's more or less my first offering as a solo artist, maybe that's all part of that. Yeah, I don't know what's happening next, but that's an exciting thing.
It is, but it's also sometimes a question, even though I've just posed it, that is not necessary, because the whole thing that we were talking about earlier with nostalgia, I don't necessarily think nostalgia is a negative, because it's, you know, thinking about amazing times that you've had and your music that was incredible. But I do find, as humans in general, we're always going, well, what's next? Are you going to reform? Do you want to do this? And actually, it's just, let's just appreciate, one, what we've already done, but exactly what you're doing now. So thanks for releasing some new music. Whatever you do in the future, it is, you know, fabulous. But it's really wonderful that you're still doing it. And I think that's important for people, because regardless of whether you're not XTC anymore, and that's so many people, that's the biggest thing, isn't it? When are you going to reform? And it's like, I don't think that's important. What's important is that you're still creating, you're still an artist, and you always will be, even if you don't put a song out for 10 years. And to relate that back to the fans, it's people are so thankful that you're still creating, and it is really not just appreciated, but it's just wonderful that even individually that everybody is still on top of their game. So
I was going to say, one doesn't do it for the fans.
Yeah.
Selfishly speaking, one does it for oneself. You know, one's peace of mind, and that one is a force in the world or whatever. You know, you're just doing it for self-accomplishment and, you know, for your own amusement.
Yeah.
That's why I do it. And if other people like it, fantastic.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's something you need to do, like taking a pill or something. You know. So, you know, it's.
I was thinking about the TCNI gigs, which all went very well, brilliantly, and you released the album, the soundtrack album, live album of that. But then you chose to stop because it was, you know, you'd done it and you'd achieved it. But did you have any regrets for it? Did you enjoy? Did you enjoy it as?
I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah.
No, I enjoyed it immensely, and Terry and I had a hell of a lot of fun. You know, it was just laughs. Most of the time, it was laughs all the way. You know, I know he had personal problems. I think he was going through a divorce at the time, but it was fantastic. And, we howled with laughter most of the time. And it was great. But what he wanted to do, he had a different agenda to me, I think. And that was what the rub was. And I didn't want any resentment to start surfacing. So I thought it's best to leave it here. Terry likes to tour and he likes to play live, and that's secondary to me. So I think he wanted to carry on from where we left off in 1982, which is not really my bag. I've been 30 odd years kind of being a studio animal, really, and that's my bag.
Will you go and see him in XTC once the restrictions are lifted?
Well, possibly, yes. We're still on good terms. We still talk, but we've accepted that we've got different agendas, and it's nothing more than that, really. We're okay with each other.
I've got to thank you now, Colin and Sarah and Peter, for having such a fascinating and in-depth and wide-ranging discussion. I've really enjoyed it. I know that the fans will equally enjoy it, not least for all the things Sarah was just saying about the fans' enthusiasm, which of course I will echo. So Colin, hope the single goes fantastically. Hope whenever you do your next artistic thing, we'll be here to listen to it. And so very much looking forward to everything else. But tremendous thanks, Colin, for doing that. It's been really good. Thank you.
No, that's fine, Mark. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Sarah, for your very good questions. And also to Peter as well.
Bye, Colin. A real pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
Cheerio, everyone.
Bye-bye then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
What do you call that noise?
Wow, that was good. Thanks again to Peter Mills, Sarah Palmer, and of course, Colin Moulding. That was really good of you, Colin, for doing that. Thanks also to Kate Catalina for her drink recommendation, and many, many thanks to the podcast supporters on Patreon who make it all possible, including the following Knights in Shining Karma: Terry Arnott, Dan Barrow, Matt Bell, Kevin Burt, Liam Duggan, Jamie Dunn, Helen Fay, Leslie Gooch, Robert Graham, Jesper Kumberg, Robert Lawlaw, Dennis LeCourrier, Liz Lynch, Ian Morris, Youssef Murrah, Amy Parkinson, Murray Meikle, Kevin Murray, Karen Neal, Mark Reed, James Reimer, Simon Slateholm, Michael Sutcliffe, Mark Thomas, Nigel Waller, and William Wilkstrom. If you'd like to support the XTC podcast, it would be very much appreciated, and you can do so if you go to patreon.com/Mark Fisher. See you all again next time. Bye.
What do you call that noise?
Head to xtclimelight.com where you can buy my 2 XTC books. First, there's the XTC Bumper Book of Fun for Boys and Girls, which is an anthology of Limelight, the XTC fanzine I made from 1982 to 1992.
We had a couple of lifelines to the world, and Limelight was one of them.
So the book is the XTC Bumper Book of Fun for Boys and Girls. It's stunning.
Thank you, Ian Lee. And then there's What Do You Call That Noise, an XTC discovery book, where you'll find more from the band, plus commentary from musicians including Anton Barbo.
For me, it's just simply a life-changing song.
Anne McHugh.
It's like a painting by Van Gogh.
Jason Faulkner.
XTC probably made the most impact on me of any band that I can think of.
Chris Butler.
If there's anything more classic XTC, this is it.
And Rick Buckler.
It was well produced as well. It had the support of a great producer. I mean, it really sounded strong.
Order your copies of both books at xtclimelight.com.
It's the paper and ink net, the internet with